population centers.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Well, good afternoon to you. Welcome into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Wymer. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It's 4 o'clock, and that means it's time for today's Top 4 at 4, where we break down 4 of the big stories that we are tracking in the Fox 35 newsroom. And joining us for today's Top 4 at 4 is Fox 35 News anchor and reporter Marlisa Goldsmith. Marlisa, we appreciate you joining us today.
Of course. Glad to be here with you, Garrett.
So we're going to start with a disturbing story out of Osceola County.
Yeah, this one is very disturbing. So a volunteer youth pastor in
Daniel, did you do it?
No.
Did you sexually abuse your foster children? Anything to say to the church members who trusted you with their kids?
Well, there it is right there. That's Daniel, Garrett. He's a volunteer youth pastor out of Kissimmee, accused of sexually assaulting 2 of his former foster children. This is according to the Osceola County Sheriff's Office. Again, 40-year-old Daniel Lampin. He's now facing 24 counts of sexual battery. This investigation all started after a 15-year-old girl came forward alleging that Lampin sexually abused her between the ages of 6 and 8. Then a second victim, who's now an adult, also reported being abused by Lampin. She says the abuse began shortly after she moved into his home when she was 16 years old. Law enforcement officials say that Lampin confessed to the crimes, and because of his access to children, authorities believe there could be more victims out there. You saw a reporter and anchor Hannah McKenzie there was following him as he was being perp walked last night. She got a call that this was about to happen. She went out there and tried her best to get some questions answered by him before he was put into that law enforcement vehicle.
And then here's video from his first appearance in court this afternoon. Always troubling to hear details of cases like this and allegations and those kinds of things. And certainly hope that there are no more victims, but certainly a concern, it sounds like, from investigators.
Yes.
Story number 2 today, and that is following up on this crazy fire. For the second time this week, we've had lightning that sparked a house fire right here in Central Florida.
Yeah, you're right. And just to kind of put this in better perspective, when this happened last night around 7:30 p.m., there were storms popping up all across Central Florida as this was happening. So this is a house that you're looking at here in the Buckingham Estates neighborhood. That's in Sanford. It was just destroyed Tuesday night after it was struck by lightning during a severe thunderstorm. That was confirmed by firefighters there on scene last night. A couple and their 2 dogs were actually inside of the home when it was struck by lightning. They managed to escape without injury, thankfully, and there were no other homes that were damaged. But here's the silver lining, if you will. Neighbors actually rallied around this couple, this family, to help them as fire crews worked to contain the blaze. There were people up and down the street offering food, offering them the ability to stay with them until they can figure things out. Obviously, they're being helped as best they can by, Red Cross and entities like that. But this was just a devastating fire. Looking at the aftermath right here, the home gone here.
Oh gosh, and you could see the video from last night, the flames just shooting out of the roof and all of that smoke, and then seeing this damage. I mean, that is major damage.
Yes.
And makes you even more thankful when you see that everyone is able to get out of that house safely, because it doesn't take long for fires like that to spread. But again, just a scary situation. We know there were thousands of lightning strikes in that storm as it was going through our area. We know we expect more storms again tonight.
Yes.
But Fox 35's Randy Hildreth spoke with a neighbor who actually saw this lightning strike, and here's what she said.
My husband and I were just sitting in our recliners, which actually face that direction, and we have 3 windows that are, facing their house. And of course, the storm was like super bad. The lightning was really incredible. And we actually saw the lightning strike come down. I mean, we both jumped out of our chairs and were like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I texted them right away, like, are you guys okay? I'm pretty sure that just hit your house. We saw like a little puff of smoke, so we thought, oh, maybe it hit something, ignited something. But, we kind of kept an eye on it for a little bit, didn't see anything. And literally like 3 minutes later, I looked up and I was like, oh my God, their house is on fire. So I called 911. My husband was texting all the neighbors, and then we, came out here, and they had already gotten their dogs out, and they were fine. But it was scary how fast it happened to where there was smoke just coming out of everything within 5 minutes.
What a scary situation to hear her describe it like that. And we know that the storms that we have seen have been pretty strong. A lot of lightning,
Yes.
the thunder just really rumbling. So certainly something to be aware of, again, because this is the second time this week that we have seen a situation like that.
And I was talking with someone last night after we got news that this happened. And, all the meteorologists always say when thunder roars, get indoors. So you imagine your home to be your safe place. You imagine when the thunderstorm is happening, let's go inside. This is where we'll be safe. And then something like this happens. Just a very unfortunate situation.
Yeah, heartbreaking. Story number 3, and that Governor Ron DeSantis signing 2 animal cruelty laws today.
Yes, 2 brand new ones. This is in a move to kind of strengthen animal welfare protection. So Governor Ron DeSantis, he signed 2 of these new bills today, major pieces of legislation. The first one, Dexter's Law. The second one is Trooper's Law. This happened Wednesday morning. So the laws are named after 2 dogs. Dexter was a 4-year-old rescue dog who was adopted and later decapitated and killed by his adopter. Dexter's Law, also known as HB 255, it strengthens punishments in animal cruelty cases, and it expands current law by not only prohibiting offenders from owning pets, but also recognizing animals as actual victims. So under this law, offenders could face pretty significant prison time.
Yeah, and that the Dexter's Law also creates an online database of animal abusers to, put more information out there specifically for shelters, for other people to kind of be aware of if you are have been convicted of some specific animal cruelty crimes, that you would be on a database.
Yeah, which would be very useful. And then the second one is Trooper. Trooper was found abandoned along I-75. You all may remember this video. This happened during Hurricane Milton. The dog had been left tied to a fence along the interstate. Trooper's Law makes abandoning a restrained animal during a natural disaster a 3rd-degree felony. Offenders could face up to 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. This was another sad story, Garrett, but then he ended up being adopted by a Florida couple. And, we did do some check-ins with them since the hurricane, and Trooper seems to be doing much better. But that was very unfortunate situation. In the middle of trying to prepare for this hurricane and then report on the hurricane and reporting on someone who tied their dog up when a natural disaster is upon us.
It's unthinkable. And, Governor Ron DeSantis said today, talked about the importance of these laws. He said most people don't need these laws, but as evidenced by these 2 situations, some people do. Here's what he said.
Why you would chain them on a fence on an interstate with at the time it was a Category 5. Now it's slowed, but this thing was approaching, and you have all the water that was rising, and I'm just thinking to myself, what would possess you to do that? I mean, if you're evacuating, you're taking the dog in your car and dumping them instead of just keeping them in your car. It just makes no sense. And there are sometimes that people are doing things that need a very swift response. So I know that there's going to be other conversations going forward about other ways that we can do. It's just 95% of the people in our society would never do any of this stuff, right? You wouldn't even need laws. They're just not going to do it because they know. But you got that small number of people who just don't have the same basic care for the pets and these animals that almost everybody else does. And that can turn very sadistic, as we saw in Dexter's case. And there's people that have a fetish of being cruel to animals. And again, this is a very small percentage, but they can do a lot of damage, and so it's our job to hold them accountable.
Yeah, and I hate seeing that video of poor Trooper tied up to that fence, because it just makes me think like who would do something like that, first of all, but then just thinking about that poor pup who had been in a home, and then also surely wondering, like, what am I doing out here? Terrified, you see in that video, but again, very glad that ended happy. Meanwhile, more questions today about the future of SpaceX's Starship after more problems arising during the 9th flight test last night.
Yeah, Gary, they thought the 9th time was going to be the charm. I guess we got to keep waiting.
Maybe the 10th.
Waiting for that. Maybe the 10th. We'll give it a go. We'll last. There we go. I mean, we've got to have that. That's better than me talking anyway, Garrett. Well, last night, SpaceX launched Starship, reaching space, but failing key mission goals before it broke apart. So this 403-foot Starship rocket was launched from its Starbase site down in Texas. Again, it was the 9th test of this vehicle. While liftoff was successful, the rocket briefly reached space. The mission didn't complete those key objectives again. So apparently, a jammed payload door stopped the release of the Mach satellite, so the booster broke apart over the Gulf of Mexico, and the spacecraft lost control before disintegrating during the descent into the Indian Ocean. Now, the company confirmed that the vehicle experienced some sort of rapid, unscheduled disassembly. So looks like there's a little more work that needs to be done, Garrett.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and this has even more, kind of broader implications. You mentioned that that was launched from Texas, where Starship has been. A couple things here. We know that NASA, with proposed budget cuts and budget plans, phasing out that SLS plan, SLS program, and the part of the Artemis program to take astronauts again to the moon in just a couple of years, and so they're going to be relying more on this Starship technology.
Right.
So still a lot of things that are going to have to be fixed in not a lot of time to kind of maintain that current schedule. And the other thing is there's been a lot of talk about bringing Starship and those launches to Florida. And there's been, we know Esther Bauer has reported on the studies being done about the sound and the noise and vibration kind of impacts on houses and businesses in the area. But this is kind of another wrinkle to that, the safety aspect, because you can't have debris raining down on populated areas, and where this is going off in Texas is a little bit of a more isolated area than our Space Coast. And so I spoke earlier with Ken Kramer, who's the founder and managing editor of Space Up Close, and I asked him, what do you want to see from these, from the future flight tests of Starship to make you more comfortable with them potentially bringing Starship to Florida Space Coast? And this was his answer.
Okay, they're going through a very narrow corridor south of Florida and between Cuba and the Caribbean islands. Very narrow. Okay, when you launch from here, we have a much wider window, but launching from Texas, very narrow. And that's overpopulated areas and near populated areas. And the last two exploded over the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos. This just cannot be permitted to happen. So we need several successful test flights before they can bring it here to Florida, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're risking infrastructure, population centers, and we don't know the impact of the sound. The Falcon 9s don't have much of an impact. This is 10 times a Falcon 9, okay? That's what it is. 16 million pounds of thrust versus about 1.7 million pounds of thrust.
Powerful rockets you're talking about there. And so what he said, basically we need to see more several successful launches in a row before he would be comfortable seeing it here.
We're already up to number 9, and we haven't gotten there yet.
Well, Marlisa, we appreciate you joining us. That is today's Top 4 at 4. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Bergeron joins me now. And Noah, we were just talking about some of the storms yesterday and all the lightning from them, and expecting some more rounds of storms this afternoon, this evening.
Yeah, that's right, Garrett. I don't think it's going to be quite as widespread, though, as we had yesterday. I'm sure you remember yesterday's storms were pretty prolific with lightning and thunder. But today, Garrett, a lot lower coverage of storms, and there's a reason for that. A large part of it is there's more cloud cover. That's helping to keep the instability lower in the atmosphere. To my side, you can see the graphics of the clouds and the 4-panel cameras. A lot of people at the beach today in Daytona. Orlando, things look nice. Titusville, things are good. Lake Fairview, things are good. Now, I wanted to, if we could take this full, Garrett, back there, possibly links 1, so everybody can see. This is the rain average by month in Central Florida from January through December. And notice there's rain every month. 2 things I want you to take away from this. One is that it does rain in winter. That's a misconception that it doesn't rain in Florida in the winter. It does. Number 2 is that clearly the rainy and wet season visually is June through September. That's when the average rain per month is over 7 inches, and per month is over 7 inches in Central Florida, with the wettest month, the peak of the rainy season, being August, when the humidity is highest and daily storms are the most. So just to isolate that for you, the actual rainy season is about June, July, August, and September, with 7 to 8 inches of rain per month. Now, if we get a tropical system or a hurricane that comes by, obviously the rain could be substantially higher, but the average historically in the rainy season is June through September. All right, so out there tonight, we don't have a lot right now. In fact, it's pretty quiet. This time yesterday, there were big storms. One thing I'm going to watch for the evening is this little boundary I've drawn in black on the Space Coast. That's the Atlantic sea breeze. It's going to work its way inland towards Orlando. And through the evening, that black line, as it moves west, may spark some storms. But I don't think tonight is anything like it was last night. So temperatures overnight, low to mid-70s, a passing thunderstorm, but again, nothing as prolific as last night. 75 tonight, Cocoa Beach. Tomorrow, 93 in the Villages, 93 in Ocala, 94 in Leesburg, 93 in Sanford, 93 in Orlando, 93 in Bithlo, about 92 in Titusville. So the idea for tomorrow is that there'll be more storms tomorrow, Garrett, than there will be today. And Friday, we actually have a cold front that's going to come through at night. On Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and Sunday are all looking fantastic with lower humidity, clearing skies, and very nice weather. So that is certainly something to look forward to for the weekend.
Yeah, Noah, I was talking with my wife yesterday. I know she was watching us here on Fox 35 News Plus, and she's already excited about the cold front you were talking about for the weekend. And she said, if that changes, I'm going to be mad at Noah. She specifically said that. So.
Well, I would not want to make your wife upset, Garrett, at all. So I will have to try my best to uphold that forecast.
All right. You and I both walking that tightrope this week.
For sure.
Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Bergeron, we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back to Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. Senator Rick Scott was in Clearwater this afternoon as he continues his trip around the state of Florida to talk about hurricane preparedness. We know we're just a few days away now from the start of hurricane season coming up on Sunday. He was in Naples yesterday, Miami this morning, Clearwater this afternoon, talking about ways to prepare and get ready for the upcoming hurricane season. After he talked about that, held his news conference, he did speak with reporters about hurricane season, concerns about FEMA, a number of other topics as well. Here is that gaggle with reporters just a little bit ago.
Okay. Senator, can you talk about FEMA? There's been a lot of concern about some cuts there. FEMA has, I believe, over $1 billion in terms of delivery to people after the 3 storms last year. I know you've been saying like it's going to be okay, but people are concerned about this here.
So here's the way to think about any emergency. Number one, it's your responsibility to take care of yourself and actually prevent damage. First yourself, then anything you own. Number two, it's local governments. Number three, it's state government. And then FEMA, the federal government, is a response organization to the government. Generally what FEMA is, the federal government is a check payer. So they help pay for debris pickup. They help pay for extra law enforcement. They help pay for extra fire. They help pay for if somebody's lost their home. So the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, testified last week in Homeland Security Committee, which I'm on, and I said, are you ready? Are you ready for hurricane season? The biggest issue we've got in Florida is the federal government's got to be a partner, but they're not the primary partner. They're not the ones sending in the first responders. We have great mutual aid agreements between our sheriff departments, our police departments, our fire departments, all of our state agencies and local agencies, and they work together. But I'm going to do everything I can to make sure FEMA does a response. I was talking today to the Secretary of Ag to make sure that they can do block grants. As you know, under Trump's first term, we were able to do block grants to get the money out from the Department of Ag quickly. We were not able to do that the last 4 years. I got the law changed to hopefully now we'll be able to get money faster out to our agriculture community, which is actually still waiting for funds.
And so we do need FEMA, you said, for the check paying ability. There's a lot of talk about spending plans right now on Capitol Hill. Do you think FEMA will be fully funded as a result of this?
I'm going to do everything I can to make sure they are. So here's what's fun. I'll tell you what's frustrating about it. Part of it is we fund in advance, and part of it is funded afterwards. And sometimes it's political getting it done afterwards. Like take Ian. It took 2 years to get some of the money to fund some of the disaster relief, just because of politics under Ian. But I'm going to fight. I don't care. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. I believe it'll get funded. I'm going to work hard to make sure it is. No one has suggested to me they don't believe it. So anybody else?
Can we ask you about the big spending tax bill that passed the House last week? You're a no right now on that bill. Is that correct?
Sure. So as you all know, the House passed a bill last week, and they worked really hard on it. I completely agree with the President Trump's agenda. Secure the border. Make sure we plus up our military. Make sure we make the tax cuts from 2017 permanent. Those are all things we ought to do. On top of that, what we've got to do is we got to look at our budget. We've had a 53% increase in spending in 5 years. 53% increase. The population is only at 2%. There's probably a little bit of waste in there. So I think we need to go back and say we've got to go back to pre-pandemic spending. So we're going to look, part of it is through this reconciliation package, which the only thing you do in reconciliation is the mandatory spending. Now, none of it should be mandatory. We should be looking at everything. But the mandatory spending, we're going to look at that. And then in the budget process in September, DOGE has shown us that there's a lot of waste in here. So we've got to do both of these. If we don't, here's what's going to happen. Interest rates are not coming down. If we keep borrowing $2 trillion extra every year, $2 trillion, inflation's not going away, interest rates are not coming down. Just this year, right? Just this year, we have to refinance over $9 trillion worth of treasuries and sell another $2 trillion. The package that just passed the House, right, will take the debt in 10 years from $37 trillion to close to $60 trillion. We're already spending over 20% of your revenues that you're going to give us in your tax dollars for interest. That's not sustainable. So we've got to find savings, and I'm going to work hard to get it done. We'll get a bill done. I think the goal is to get it done by the 4th of July. We have to get it done by probably the end of July because of the debt ceiling, but I think a bill will pass.
And I know you've been a big champion for Venezuelans. I wanted to ask you about the Supreme Court decision that will allow their protected status to get taken away. What's your take on that?
Well, the Supreme Court made the right decision. if you look at the law, the president has the right to decide TPS, all right? And then the president has the right to decide when it ends, right? That's the law. Now, President Trump, during his first term, he protected the Venezuelans through deferred action, all right, which was the right thing to do. I'm very supportive of the Venezuelans. They can't go back. But it was abused in the last administration, so they allowed in, Maduro's gangs, his criminals. They flooded our country. Those have to go away. They can't have TPS. So I'm going to fight for the Venezuelans that are here, that are not narco traffickers, not criminals, and not terrorists. So I believe we'll figure this out. But the Supreme Court made the right decision because the question is whether the president has a right to do TPS. That's the law.
That was Senator Rick Scott in Clearwater just a little bit ago. If you were watching Fox Local in the 3 o'clock hour, we did stream that full news conference for you where he was talking about hurricane preparedness. We're going to step aside, take a quick break here on Fox 35 News Plus, but we'll be right back after this.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Wymer. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. An emotional outburst during a Titusville council meeting, and a mother demanding answers about the officer-involved shooting that killed her son. Fox 35's Esther Bauer joins us live now via Zoom. And Esther, I know this is a story that we've been following, but it sounds like this mother still has not gotten her questions answered.
No questions answered and no body cam footage released from the night of February 7th. That is when police say they were called out to this house multiple times, and Trimaria Charles, who you're looking at on your screen, allegedly had a gun in his waistband. That gun, police say, fell out, and then police say that Trimaria picked up the gun and came at Titusville police officers, which ultimately police say prompted one of their officers to shoot and kill Samantha Charles' son. So we're now more than 100 days, 15 weeks since this shooting has happened. And city council meetings really have been full of questions and frustration from people like Samantha, who's been to several meetings, has spoken during public comment. But at yesterday's meeting, she was actually asked to leave. I believe we have some of that clip where you can see for yourself. She was in city council chambers, and then the mayor ultimately told an officer to have her taken out.
I've been sitting here waiting to see what happened to my son. Y'all shot my son running from the back. Right, y'all hide the footage.
Niggas not here patiently, waiting all night. Y'all move the comments. Y'all know what we here for. I'm not going nowhere. I'll be back next meeting. I don't care about getting kicked out. I want to know the truth about what happened to my son. This is no state of justice for Tamarian. I'm never leaving. I'm trying to get you up there. I'm still going to be here. I don't care. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of sitting here right now. I don't care. I won't
You don't care about her opportunity.
They want me to go
Y'all
start
gonna move. Y'all gonna move her.
I'm tired of this.
He told y'all to move her.
Of this meeting on Tuesday night, but for some context for those of you that weren't at the meeting, is usually the public is able to give public comments towards the beginning of the meeting. We follow a lot of city council meetings. They can go upwards of 10, 11 p.m. So normally we can see people like Samantha and other people that want to speak to council. They can do that earlier, so then they can leave the meetings. The council voted right at the beginning of the meeting to move this public comment to the end of the meeting. So these people, Samantha, this whole group, have been sitting there for upwards of 3 hours, waiting and waiting and waiting to be heard. And so ultimately this mother just wanted to share how she's feeling and the frustration that she has not been able to have answers, have clarity about what happened to her son. So after this mother was taken out of the meeting, the city council did spend some time talking about this. And I can tell you, they are not thrilled with the FDLE agency, the fact that it's taken 15 weeks and counting to get any information. So some city council members said, I don't care if we go to New York, Nebraska, a different agency out of state. I really don't want to use FDLE moving forward, because what they're saying is it's a horrific situation that has tied their hands. They can't give answers. They can't release details. They can't share body cam because the city council feels that the FDLE, they're the lead on this. So they really can't do anything until they ultimately conclude their investigation. So we are at TPD right now. And I did speak with the spokesperson a little bit ago. What they informed me is that FDLE has wrapped their investigation. So the state attorney now has that investigation. They tell me that is the final step before everything can be made public. I have a new statement where the deputy chief said family is going to get everything first. They're going to let the family see the evidence relating to this case. Then the public will get to see everything, because they too feel this has dragged on far too long.
Is there a timeline for that?
So police really couldn't comment because it wasn't theirs, but they said in previous, they said usually about 3 attorneys look at it and it could take about 1 week or so. We have reached out to FDLE to get some clarification on why this investigation has taken so long, because we were originally told this would take about 4 to 6 weeks to wrap. Council did vote yesterday. They advised city staff to look into what agencies, what other paths forward, what updates they can make to city code or city plans in place to possibly choose someone other than FDLE if another officer involved shooting happens in the future.
All right, Fox 35's Esther Bauer trying to get some of those questions answered. We appreciate you joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Absolutely, and we'll keep you posted.
All right. Hopefully some answers on that soon. Let's go to Lake County now, and Fox 35's Marie Edinger, who's following up on a story where a tow truck driver was attacked in Claremont. Marie joins us live now via Zoom, and Marie, we appreciate you joining us here. What happened?
Sure. So it's a couple who has a tow truck company. They were out for repossession. They had the legal order to be there, which they did later provide to the deputies who responded on the scene. So they were doing everything they're supposed to be doing. They went in to repossess this man's car. And while they were doing this, according to the police report, the man who owned the car, Edio Corgazino, came out and started attacking them. So the woman, the wife of this pair, was in his car as it was being towed away. Her husband is the one driving the tow truck. They've already got it hooked up. They're taking it out. And then allegedly Corgazino came in and just pulled open the door and started hitting this woman. The police report says that he hit her in the chest and the abdomen and in the arm. She later stopped breathing. I was able to talk with her husband today. He told me that she is still in intensive care. This is 4 days after this incident occurred. He said that she has stopped breathing multiple times since then. While at the hospital, she suffered a stroke. And that's all because, according to the husband and according to the police report, she stopped breathing. The husband says for 8 minutes her brain was without oxygen, the doctors told him. So she is recovering, he says, but she's got a long road ahead of her. Corgazino is in the Lake County jail. He has a $10,000 bond. He's charged with a felony battery as well as burglary or attempted burglary, including a battery. That would be for trying to get his car back, one would assume. And then a simple battery as well, because he also allegedly pushed down the husband who was trying to defend his wife in all of this. So it's just this crazy, really, really scary story. We did also find out, I just got confirmation maybe 5 minutes ago from the Lake County Sheriff's Office that Corgazino is now facing, he also has a detainer from Immigration Services. ICE says he is from Brazil and that he is in the country illegally, or that he is an illegal alien and he is not a citizen. I did also see that he was arrested once before, just about a year and a half ago. He was taken in because, according to his arrest report, he tried flagging down a police officer around 1:30 in the afternoon, just because his car tire had gone flat, so he needed help. And then as the police officer was running his license, he saw that it had been suspended for failing to pay a traffic ticket. So the officer brings this up to him. Corgazino then pulls out a different license, this one from Massachusetts. So what I was doing right before hopping onto the Zoom was trying to see if he has any criminal record in Massachusetts. When the Massachusetts driver's license did not work for this officer, the officer pointed out, you cannot drive with a different license when you're in Florida, when your Florida license is suspended. So then Corgazino pulled out a third license, this one also from Florida. The police report noted at that time that the officer doesn't know why he has multiple licenses with different names on them, by the way. That we might presume, be related to his immigration status, since we now know he's here allegedly illegally.
I'm curious, Marie, are there any protections in place in law for workers like this, tow truck drivers doing these repossessions? Are there any sentencing enhancements or anything like that to strengthen the penalties against suspects who would commit crimes against workers like these in this situation?
It's a really interesting thought, Garrett. So far from what I'm seeing in Corgazino's charges, he hasn't had any enhancement like that added on. Obviously, there are stipulations like that for law enforcement officers. So battery on a law enforcement officer is different, and domestic battery is categorized differently. I am not aware of any enhancements, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. He's not charged with any of them just yet. However, I was talking with somebody else who has friends who are tow truck drivers. I chatted with them today, who do repossessions as well, and they were saying it's a really, really scary business. People obviously do not want their cars taken. So going in like that can be really scary. And this couple obviously suffered among the worst possible fates one could when doing a job like that. So again, the wife in all of this is still in intensive care. The husband didn't want to go on camera today, but we did talk on the phone for a good while and texted a bit back and forth after that. And he is just really, really hoping that things proceed through the legal system as best they can. He also, though, is worried about the medical bills that could stem from all of this, because again, his wife is really suffering in the hospital and is going to have a long road ahead of her for her recovery from that stroke and from having a lack of oxygen to her brain for so long. So he wants Corgazino to pay for those medical bills, but he says he has called a couple of lawyers about that and hasn't had much success so far.
All right, Fox 35's Marie Ettinger. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Fox 35 News Plus.
I think
we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. That was the ninth test flight of the SpaceX mega rocket Starship. Last night from Texas, everything lifted off just fine. Everything went fine until it didn't. It was about an hour into the launch when the rocket lost control, ended up tumbling back into Earth's atmosphere and breaking apart. So still a lot of questions, maybe even more questions than there were before that test flight. And some of those questions include, what does it mean for upcoming missions, including missions to the moon that are planned over the next few years? And what does it mean for Florida's Space Coast? So we know that the future moon missions are relying on Starship more with the phase out of the SLS and Artemis program. So that means this technology is potentially more important now than ever. So is the timeline of those future missions at risk? This afternoon, I spoke with Ken Kramer, who is the founder and managing editor of Space Up Close, and he says he believes SpaceX is pushing too fast. Ken, it seems like they solved one issue with Starship only to find some more. What happened?
Well, they may have solved one issue. That's actually what we don't know, because it hasn't been very open as far as SpaceX goes. Very few details on what went wrong last time and the fixes that they made. So we do know they changed a number of things for this flight, number 9, compared to the last flight, number 8. But we don't have any great details, and that is really unfortunate. So what happened was they made more progress. Yes, it was partially successful. However, in the end, both stages had catastrophic failures. So they have a lot of work to do. There's still a lot that needs to be fixed, and they got to get on the stick quickly to get this done, because this is the lunar lander eventually for NASA, and they want to land astronauts in 2027, in 2 years from now. They're nowhere near ready to be able to do that. They've got to do a lot more work to fix things, and they've got to do a lot more to let us know what's going on. And Elon Musk, this is very important, Elon Musk cannot be allowed to bully the FAA, which is what he did. He basically fired the FAA when Trump took office. And what you want is, you need to have an independent investigation that is not tainted by SpaceX, okay? You've got to have experts looking at what's going on here, what's wrong, because they're flying over populated areas, okay? The last 2 exploded over the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos. And luckily that didn't happen this time, but in the future, you know, the end of this year, next year, they want to bring this rocket here to the Space Coast, and it is a gigantic rocket, the most powerful ever built. And if something goes wrong, especially when they're bringing that rocket back, you know, we got so many people in here, in this area, hundreds of thousands of people that could be impacted. And so a lot more work has to be done before that can proceed. And I'm also concerned that Musk is not taking this seriously enough, because what did he tweet after the failure yesterday? He said, oh, we're going to increase the launch cadence to every 3 or 4 weeks. I think this is exactly wrong. You need to step back, see what happened, put in some robust, reliable, and repeatable fixes, and then proceed. You know, the iterative policy they have is fine when it's purely experimental and it's out in the middle of nowhere. But this, even in Texas and the Gulf, is in populated areas, and definitely here. So I think they need to do a lot more work, and they need to do a lot more openness, and then they can proceed.
What do you think this means for those future moon missions, with you know, many of them relying on this technology?
First of all, it's absolutely crazy, in my opinion, to cancel Project Artemis after Artemis 3. You don't have Starship perfected. Once they get it perfected, and I'm sure they will do that at some point in the future, years from now, then you can transition from SLS and Orion over to Artemis. You can't do that now. So I think the whole moon program is endangered by these cuts to Project Artemis before you even have Starship perfected. And they have to do a lot of work. It's the lunar lander, but there's another version that is a lunar tanker, because they need to launch about 15 of these to refuel the lunar lander before it goes to the moon from the Earth. So there are at least 15 preparatory flights, fueling flights, that are needed before they can send the astronauts to the moon and link up with them in lunar orbit. So I think it's very risky and very short-sighted to cancel Artemis. Also very short-sighted and dumb to cancel ISS when it's still in the prime, and to cancel the Lunar Gateway. This is all very foolish. And Musk is responsible for this. He has the president's ear, and he is slashing science across the government, and it's terrible. And those are going to impact jobs all across the Space Coast and across the country. All right, thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs here on the Space Coast, throughout Florida, major contractors throughout all the southern states, and in fact, SLS and Artemis have contracts in all 50 states. Okay? So this is going to have a terrible impact. And what it is going to do is only going to enable the communist Chinese. They have a very simple program, 2 launches, and then they'll get to the moon by 2030. And if they don't fix this Starship, then communist China will beat us to the moon. That's the trajectory that we're headed on right now, unless things change.
Ken, last thing here, and you mentioned this about the plans to bring Starship to Florida and to Florida's Space Coast. And we've heard the concerns about that. We know that there are studies being done about the impact from the noise and the vibrations and that kind of thing. But also, as we continue to see these kind of tech issues, whatever may be causing some of these problems that are leading to these issues during the test flights. What would it take for you to be comfortable with seeing Starship launches on Florida's Space Coast?
I want to see a bunch of successful launches out of Texas, first of all. They have to perfect it there. Okay, they're going through a very narrow corridor south of Florida and between Cuba and the Caribbean islands. Very narrow. Okay, when you launch from here, we have a much wider window, but launching from Texas, very narrow. And that's overpopulated areas and near populated areas. And the last 2 exploded over the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos. This just cannot be permitted to happen. So we need several successful test flights before they can bring it here to Florida, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're risking infrastructure, population centers, and we don't know the impact of the sound. You know, the Falcon 9s don't have much of an impact. This is 10 times a Falcon 9, okay? That's what it is. 16 million pounds of thrust versus about 1.7 million pounds of thrust. And they want to bring that back, like they're bringing the Falcon 9 boosters back here on land, which is fine. But if it goes out of control, you're very close to populated areas, 6 to 10 to 15 miles away only. A lot of tourists, a lot of residents, a lot of infrastructure from businesses. So that's all got to be perfected because, yeah, what's the impact? Sound. We know that windows rattle. My house rattles. I live pretty close to the water here, and sometimes these rattle even from Falcon 9s and from Falcon Heavy, which is about a quarter of a Starship. So, and then there's the impact of sewage, water discharges. What's the other impact on the environment? So I want to see a bunch of successful launches. That's what NASA needs. They need to see successful launches before you put humans. You can't sacrifice human lives until this system is perfected. And it is nowhere near being perfected. That upper stage is the most critical. It has to work. That's what will go into Earth orbit and then lunar orbit. And they haven't been successful at doing that at all. So I want to see a bunch of successful flights, and then you can bring it here.
We'll be right back with more Fox 35 News Plus after this short break.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer said today that affordable housing is one of the two most pressing issues in the city of Orlando. He said that at a ribbon cutting for new affordable housing that transformed an old hotel into 150 apartments for low-income residents. After that event, he spoke with reporters about those units opening up and also tomorrow's deadline when it comes to design firms submitting their plans for the Pulse Memorial.
So this is really a feel-good day. This is a public-private partnership that converted an old, crime-ridden motel into 150 affordable units are being made available to teachers, custodians, in schools. They're beautiful. Proud to live in them, and you heard all the different speeches this morning, so many different people involved. I'm just proud of the community for being able to get this together.
What kind of is the state of affordable housing in the city?
So if I were asked what are the two biggest issues in Orlando, I would say affordable housing is one of those two. It's been exacerbated by the, COVID was a tough time for building. We got behind at that point, and then the price of residential property has just gone out of sight. So we don't have enough units, number one, and then that exacerbates the homeless issue. People that would not have been homeless in the past or just can't make it week to week.
And ARPA funds, this is one of the first completed projects.
Okay, I mentioned before that one good thing that did come out of COVID was American Rescue Plan funding, and they allocated that based on population. City of Orlando got $58 million. We dedicated the entirety of it to homeless and affordable housing initiative. $4 million of that went to help with this project.
What do you make of the fact that there's going to be at least 15 units dedicated to OCPS employees at this specific location? Well,
we know that some of the most important jobs in our community don't pay as well as they should. So it's a plight that is, in some ways, you're embarrassed that you have to provide affordable housing to teachers, but on the other hand, we're making that happen.
Mayor, I just wanted to ask you, tomorrow is the last day for people to submit for Pulse for the memorial. It's been a long time coming. Can you just speak on that, what we're hoping for?
Well, we wanted to make sure it was a transparent process that everybody was comfortable with. We spent basically 9 months with a committee of survivors and family members that came up with a conceptual design that was put out. Now, people that want to actually finish the design and then construct the memorial have the opportunity to be part of that process. We'll do the regular committee work, select a number one, and we want to be done in the summer of 27.
Perfect. And then the only I know she had mentioned before in regards to you guys are going to pretty much rank them, the submissions 1 through 10, and then you're going to present that to the council. Can you just speak to me on that process?
Yeah, it's a standard process, standard procurement process. So in this case, it won't be determined by price. Some are, it's just the lowest cost, but in this case, we'll select the one that looks like they've presented the best proposal.
What are you hoping this is going to mean for the city of Orlando?
I'm hoping there's closure. It'll be past the 10-year mark that we finally get the memorial done. City's only been involved in this a little more than a year and a half, I guess, after the foundation failed to get it done, but it is critically important to our community for the healing that we finish this memorial.
So big step forward with that deadline tomorrow. Well, that's going to do it for us here on Fox 35 News Plus. We appreciate you joining us. Going to go ahead and send things off to Studio B. Fox 35's Marlisa Goldsmith and Luann Sorrell getting ready for that newscast, which begins in just seconds right here on Fox Local.
right now on Fox 35 News at 5.
The lightning was really incredible.
Summertime storms wreaking havoc on Central Florida, from flooding issues to burning homes.
It was scary how fast it happened, to like where there was smoke just coming out of everything within like 5 minutes.
In just a matter of hours,